Hall. So he mentioned at that time that they were in a parking lot, him and Shyam Sundar Prabhu, distributing books or magazines. And at that time, Shyam Sundar Prabhu told him that he was thinking to go to London. He had the desire to travel to London. And Mukundamar said that he didn't want to be outdone by his friend and colleague. So he didn't want him to kind of go somewhere he couldn't go. So he said, "Oh, I was also thinking the same," uh, even though he hadn't thought of it before. Then they wrote to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada immediately wrote a letter back encouraging it. And so they very, very quickly planned the trip. And it happened very sort of soon. And they flew first to Iceland, then to Luxembourg, and then from Luxembourg took a train to London. So it was a long journey for them. And basically was saying how they went through so many austerities, but in those early days, Prabhupada's letters were their great strength. Prabhupada would write to them almost every week, to one of them at least, or to all of them. So this is how the sort of London adventure started. That's what they call it. And when they came to London, then at first they were in very different places. They were all living in different places because they couldn't find a place for them all together. But their first London centre was in Betterton Street, in Covent Garden. And then from there, then they decided that, it was actually Yamuna Devi. She went to one Hindu center. And in that Hindu center, amongst all the deities, she spotted a marble Radha and Krishna. Until this point in time, the deities only knew of Radha and Krishna through pictures, or there was the first brass deities, small brass deities of Radha and Krishna had been installed in San Francisco. But she'd never seen big marble white deities. So at that point, she sort of desired that she would like to have Radha and Krishna deities in marble for a London temple. She wrote to Srila Prabhupada about this thought, and immediately he gave his blessings, and he also started to meditate on this. Then he kept telling them, I'm coming, prepare for a London center. And his plans got delayed several times, but when he finally arrived, he said, right, we need to do this now. And it was November, I think it was exactly 1 month, so 14th of November, 1969, Prabhupada declared on the 14th of December this year, we will have the installation ceremony for Radha and Krishna. And the devotees said, we don't even have deities, so how we can plan it? But Prabhupada made them print invitation cards, send the invitation cards to everybody that they knew, all their contacts like that. All arrangements were made, and they even found a place and all of that. So everything was arranged, but there was still no deities. Even 2 weeks before, there was no deities. But he was like, we need to find deities. So the devotees were making all sorts of inquiries, looking in papers and, making prayers. But Krishna comes because he wants to be served. So the endeavors were being made by the devotees, but it's not through our endeavors that Krishna comes. Krishna actually comes because his desire. So all of a sudden they saw some notice, I think in the paper or somewhere, saying that there were these deities from the Hindu center, and did anybody want them? So 2 devotees went to sort of check it out and see what was happening. When they went there, they saw these 3-foot marble deities. And they were immediately very attractive. So they immediately came back and they told Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada said, where is it? Let's get the car, let's go. So they went round there straight away, and the deities had been brought for a Hindu center, and the Hindu center, because the Hindus believe that deities that have been damaged cannot be worshipped. So in transit, whilst they were coming from India, Radharani's finger was broken. So because of that, they deemed them unsuitable for worship. So then they ended up at one man's house. This man was Mr. Doyle. And so he had them in his house and he was trying to find what to do with them. So Prabhupada went there and he first of all greeted them nicely. And he said, they sat him down. He's a sannyasi, so any Indian person would greet a sannyasi very nicely. So they greeted him nicely, sat him down, and then they started talking. And Prabhupada made so many different conversations. The devotees in the room couldn't understand it. Okay, he must have been speaking in Hindi or whatever. But the Prabhupada just kept talking, and he kept talking, and they would laugh and they would talk, and it kept going on and on and on. And the devotees described they just didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what he was talking about, but they were just quietly sitting there. And then eventually, at some point, when he'd had a lot of conversation and it was very pleasant and everyone was very happy, Prabhupada got up and said, okay, so we might as well see the deities. So he made it sound like he was not there for the deities. He was just coming to meet them. And whilst he was there, he might as well see them. So then they went to the next room where the deities were, and they were covered with a cloth. So Prabhupada said, oh, can we uncover them? Can we see them? So Mukunda and Shamsundar were with him. So they were there and they uncovered the deities. They uncovered them, and Prabhupada again didn't pay so much attention to the deities. He was just continuing his conversation. So he looked over to them, but he just kind of continued talking. And then in conversation, as he paused in his conversation, he just turned to Shamsundar Prabhu and Mukunda Prabhu and said, how heavy are they? So they went and they picked them up. They said, not so heavy. So Prabhupada just with the sort of signaling with his head just went like this, that meaning let's go. So they picked up the deities and kept walking. And the gentleman is there going, oh, but we can bring them to you. Maybe next week we can bring them to you. And Prabhupada's like, no, it's okay. We have a van. We have our transportation. We've come sort of, in our own vehicle. So it's okay. There's no trouble. And he was like saying, no. And then he was trying to see a way to negotiate a price for them or something like that. But Prabhupada just kept talking around him. And he kept the conversation so busy that they didn't really get to have any conversation about what exchange there would be for the deities. And before they knew it, they were already sitting in the van. So as they got into, the devotees got in the van with Radha and Krishna in the van, and then Prabhupada kept talking. And then whilst he's talking, he gets into the van himself. And as soon as he's in the van, he says to the driver, drive. And so then they just started driving. After they came out of there, they turned around the corner and went down the street. Then Prabhupada said, stop now. And when he stopped, he got out, he turned around, because the deities were in the back seat behind. He turned around and he paid obeisances to them. So this shows that Prabhupada was so expert. He didn't want to show interest in front of this gentleman in the deities. But in his heart, he knew that Krishna had come for them. And then he offered all respects later on, as soon as there was a possible moment when it wouldn't be seen. Because if Prabhupada had showed a lot of interest in the deities, then I'm sure they would have tried to haggle a high price for them. So Prabhupada just kind of took them. And he said later to Mukunda Maharaj, he said, Krishna has come for us. See how he tricked these Hindu center people to bring them here. But actually, he was coming for us. So Prabhupada knew that if Krishna was coming, that was for sure. And he said that he wants to be worshipped by us. So then there was like a very short period of time before the date that they had already planned the festival for. And Radharani's hand was still broken. So he asked Shamsundar Prabhu, who's very good at fixing things and making things. Shamsundar Prabhu also made the whole temple room. He wanted to make it out of a redwood that he'd brought from America with him. And he made it look like the inside of a boat upside down. So it had a very curved ceiling, and bowers of the boat were sort of the ceiling. So then he got him to also fix Radharani's finger as well. On the day before the festival, Prabhupada called all the devotees in the temple devotees, to the temple room. So it was a very intimate time. And he said, now we have to ask them to come and reside here. Now they are here. Tomorrow we'll be performing the ceremony, but now we have to welcome them here. So Prabhupada sat on the Vyasasana, they offered him a garland. He then sang to the deities. Basically, it was an adivas that he was performing, but the devotees didn't know that. They never experienced anything like this. So he was just there and he was conducting it very sweetly. It was very sweet, very intimate, and just with the temple devotees that were there, no guests. So then the next day, they set up for the installation. The installation ceremony actually went on for many, many hours because the whole setup and, getting ready, and then the abhishek, then a yagya was done. So many items were there, and because the devotees didn't really know how to do any of this, so Prabhupada was conducting the whole thing himself. So he asked the devotees beforehand to arrange 2 stainless steel plates that have a high lip. So it was like sort of this kind of deep, and a big round plate, so that they could stand each of the deities in there. And Prabhupada you'll see famous pictures of where he's pouring with just a ladle, a serving spoon, he's pouring the milk on Radha Krishna. So they didn't have all the fancy paraphernalia. They didn't have lotas and all sorts of things like that. So they just used whatever was there. But the main thing was that Krishna was bathed, and he was welcomed. A yagya was performed, and then the deities were put back on the altar. And then at that point, whilst they were taking the deities to the altar, Shamsundar Prabhu had built a canopy over the deities, like we have a simhasana over the top. So he'd built this canopy with sort of pillars, but because he ran out of time, because he was fixing Radharani, then he didn't secure the pillars properly. And as the devotee was placing Radharani on the altar, his elbow knocked the pillar, and the whole thing was going to come crashing down. And Prabhupada was at the side, and he saw it, and he quickly jumped before anyone even realized what was happening. He quickly jumped and held Radharani with one hand and the pillar with the one hand, because he didn't want anything to crash and to hurt her. So Prabhupada saved it at that moment. And then afterwards, once they stabilized everything, he told Yamuna, he said, please dress them quickly. And then he went back upstairs. So at this point, it was very, very late. So that's why he wanted them dressed quickly. He didn't want the guests to have to wait too long. And then after they were dressed, they made the first bhoga offering. And when they rang the bell for the bhoga offering at the beginning of the offering, as soon as the bell started to ring, Prabhupada said, distribute. Because he saw that some people had been sitting there for 5 or 6 hours and that they would start to leave. And he didn't want anybody to leave without the first offering Mahaprasad. So even the mantras weren't finished, but as soon as the bell rang, he said distribute. Because Krishna also eats with his eyes. So it's not our normal standard. We normally leave it for much longer to give Krishna more time to eat, but Prabhupada could make those sort of exceptions. And this is how he made sure that everybody got some Mahaprasadam from them. So, yeah, so in connection to that, I'll just move fast forward another 40 years to when we had the 40th anniversary. The 40th anniversary, we decided to do very big. It was Jainitai Prabhu's conception that he wanted to have a big celebration for the deities. And he wanted it really grand. So we did 10 days of celebrations, 10 days of special darshans. And to this day, I do not understand how it happened. I really don't. Most of us didn't sleep at all for 10 days. How can you not sleep for 10 days? But one thing I'll tell you is Krishna makes everything possible for his service. Whatever is impossible, he makes it happen. But whatever happens, he'll make sure whatever service he wants it happens. It takes place. So it's not that we're particularly needed for his service because he is independent. He can get anything done, but he engages us by his kind mercy in his service. But you'll see everything that he wants for his festival, it happens. I've seen for myself, sometimes my health is not so great and I don't have so much energy. There was one point in time for every day I would have no more than about 2 hours of energy. But if I had to do a festival for him, I could go for 20 hours. I don't know how. This is absolutely impossible. But on his festival day, he gives that special mercy. I once asked this question of one senior devotee. I said, why is it that most of the time I have no energy at all, but on a festival day I could go for 20 hours if it's required? And they told me that festival, the word for festival is utsav. Utsav actually literally means lifting one up. Utsav.
Mm.
And it's lifting one out of the bodily conception of life. So Utsav, on the day of the Utsav, we come up from the bodily conception of life. We take that spiritual kind of, where we become in the spiritual world if we're engaged in Krishna's service. Similarly, Prabhupada once said, this temple is, the quote that I saw was actually from Melbourne, but it can be translated to any temple. He said, this temple is not Melbourne, this is Vrindavan. And according to one's desire, we can be in the material or the spiritual world. So if you are engaged in the service of the temple and of the deities, you are in the spiritual world. There is no doubt. It's a beautiful quotation to meditate on. And in fact, in front of Radha Londoneswara, one time Prabhupada was praying, and he said, this is Vrindavan Krishna. He is non-different. He is Vrindavan Krishna. And you'll see many times when he's dressed so opulently, how does he look? He looks like that Vrindavan boy, right? I don't know if any of you have noticed, but our Krishna also has a bluish complexion. He's made of white marble. But many times, if you look carefully when you take darshan, he'll be slightly blue. And there have been times where he's very blue. And it's not just one or two devotees that notice it, everyone notices it at some point. So just wait for that day, because his mood changes according to how he's being served. So I got distracted a little bit, but what I was trying to say was one of our darshans during the 40th anniversary was a replication of the altar at Berry Place. And so we made the replication with sort of the pillars and a covering canopy at the top. We transformed the steps, which are this, the creamish marble steps, into black steps, because they're the main part of the altar was black. They used to also decorate the altar with these like long candlesticks and long vases. So we put all of that on the altar and made it look like Berry Place. And one thing that happened just 2 minutes before the darshan was about to open, they were about to blow the conch and one of the pillars fell. And for the devotees who were there, it was like, this is exactly what happened on the day of the installation. It was like Krishna was repeating his pastime. And again, I think it was Murli Manohar Prabhu, he caught that pillar. And we had to delay the darshan a couple of minutes so we could put everything back in place. But yeah, it was really incredible. It was like, wow, we're replicating Berry Place and Krishna's replicating his installation day. Okay, so another thing that I read about or heard about was Tamo Krishna Maharaj. When he spoke about the deities, he said their mukhats are very special. You'll often see that Krishna has these mukhats that kind of come up and, so I try and describe, but it comes up and it curves around. But that curve is going towards Radharani. And Radharani has a chandrika that curves towards Krishna. So he said, it's showing that Krishna is going to Radharani and Radharani is turning towards Krishna. Radha Londoneswara are also known as very, very merciful. They're known throughout the world. But even just people who come to see them, I've heard so many times over the years that devotees have come for the first time to see them, maybe from some different country or something like that. The first time they lay eyes on them, they say, "You're so beautiful. I just want to do something for you." I remember one Maji was saying, she was like, "It just came out of my heart that I want to do something for you." And then I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. How's that going to be possible? She was from Pune. And in India, it's very standard that ladies can't worship the deities. Ladies can't do much for the deities. It's all done by brahmacharis. So she didn't even know where that came from, but it was just a spontaneous offering within her heart. By the following week, just 1 week later, she was already engaged in puja service. It was incredible. And I've heard this so many times over the years. So Radha Londoneswara, they give their service very, very freely, very, very easily. In fact, so easily that we can take it for granted. And we may not appreciate so much because it's come with such ease. However, they can also take it away. So we have to be very, very mindful and very careful. I've seen it with my own eyes several times over the years. And Mahaduti Prabhu used to speak about it. One of our previous temple presidents, now Mahaduti Swami. And, I've heard it from others as well, that Krishna, if he sees the devotees especially if they're offending other devotees. He will kick you out, and he will do it in such a way that you won't even realize you're being kicked out. Some other reason, external reason will come why you're having to leave. But those devotees never come back. You know? So even Prabhupada one time was praying in front of Radha Londoneswara before he was leaving to go to some other country. And he was praying, please protect me from Maya. And his servant who was there asked him, but Prabhupada, you're a pure devotee. Why you need to pray like this? And Prabhupada said, one of the problems with the devotees is we don't fear Maya enough. She's so powerful that she could come at any time and disrupt our service. So we must be very mindful and very careful in our service to make sure that we're always being careful not to make any offenses. So now I'll just talk a little bit about why we call this Radha Londoneswara the original deities of ISKCON. This was something that I was actually told to me back in 2003, and I didn't understand it. So I was serving in Melbourne Temple, and this is something else I've noticed over the last 30 odd years. Wherever I go, Radha Londoneswara seem to follow me. And it doesn't matter where it is. Sometimes it's some small house of somebody in Mumbai or, you know, something like that. And they've never been to London even, but they have a picture of Radha Londoneswara in their house. You know, I've seen on the fridge, there's a little picture, or somewhere or other, there's some little picture of Radha Londoneswara. So wherever I go, they seem to follow me. One time I went to Mayapur. It was when you know, one of the first few times I visit Mayapur. So I hadn't been going much. I was going like once in a year. Maybe the third or fourth time I went. And we just arrived at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and at maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, we arrived in Mayapur. And then we decided we're not tired, we'll go to Mangalarti. So at 5 o'clock after Mangalarti, one Mataji comes to me. I'd sort of seen her before, but I didn't really know her. She comes to me and she says, you make garlands for Radha Londoneswara. And I thought, how do you know that? She said, you have to come and make for Radha Madhava. So from that day on, whenever I've received any service for any other deities, I've known it's actually Radha Londoneswara's arrangement. And yeah, so one time even I think it was in Gujarat, I just was walking around in the temple and I walked past one room and they said, come, you need to make Srila Prabhupada's garland. They don't know me. They don't know I can make a garland. It's like, but yeah, Radha Londoneswara are very magical like that. So when I was serving in Melbourne at that time, I was doing the morning paraphernalia washing. Some of you are doing the bathing trays now. So the similar service was there in the morning for the deities there. And Nashinga Kavach Prabhu, the deity worship ministry, he was serving there at that time, and he'd be dressing Radha Ballabha, the deities there. But every time he came out from the altar to the paraphernalia room and to try and find jewelry or whatever he needed, he would constantly talk about Radha Londoneswara. And then after a few weeks, I couldn't help myself. I was like, Prabhu, can I ask you, you're dressing Radha Ballabha. Should your meditation be there? How come you just talk about Radha Londoneswara? He would talk about Radha Londoneswara's jewelry room, their outfit room, their this, their that. And at that time, we didn't have this wonderful new pujari that we have now. That time it was the old pujari, you know, it was like these office drawers were their jewelry drawers. But somehow he would just talk about them. And so when I asked him this question, he said to me with really serious voice, he said, Mataji, you do not understand. He said, Radha Londoneswara are the original deities of ISKCON, and all other deities manifest from them. And he kept repeating that to me over the next 6 months, every week. And I was like, okay, I kind of understand, but I realized over the years I didn't understand. That's why he kept telling me. Radha Londoneswara were the first large-size Radha and Krishna to be installed in ISKCON. So therefore, they have the extra potency of being the first ones that came to us. And also, they came to us on their own. You know, nowadays, many times devotees will go to like Jaipur or something and instruct the carvers and oversee the carving and have a specific form. There was none of that. They just came by themselves. So we hear about different kinds of deities. There's like self-manifested deities. There's the deities that have come because of the prayers of the acharyas. So Radha Londoneswara are not quite self-manifested, but in one sense they are, because they came of their own accord. And they definitely have come because of the prayers of the acharyas, in particular Srila Prabhupada. But they also came because of the desire of the devotees, especially of Yamuna Devi. And in those early years after their installation, in the beginning, Yamuna Devi was the only pujari there. And they didn't have a simpler standard. The standard that we have now is what was set at that time by Prabhupada. Prabhupada taught her how he wanted deities to be served. And she writes that she would get up at 1:30 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning to chant her japa. Then she'd wake up the deities and then perform Mangala Arti. Then she would dress the deities, then do Darshanarti. Then she'd cook the offering. So she did everything, all the artis, all the dressing, all the cooking. And not only that, we think that, the Pujari service is so hard at the moment and there's so many things to do. Not only did she do everything for the deities, she also took care of the guests. Many times she was the only devotee in the temple, because at that time the devotees Prabhupada wanted them to go out for 8 hours a day, every day, either Harinam or distributing magazines or distributing incense and trying to also collect some funds. So she was the only one there. So if anybody walked into the temple, she would take care of them. And on top of that, when the devotees came back from a day of Sankirtan, she would make sure that there was enough prasadam for all the devotees to eat. So basically, she took care of the deities, the guests, and the devotees, all by herself. So she would say that she would get up at like 1:30, 2 o'clock, chant all her japa beforehand, and then she'd be going right throughout the day, serving the deities and taking care of everything. And then after she puts them to rest at night, then she would rest. There's also stories of how sometimes while paying obeisances to the deities, she would fall asleep because she was so busy all day long. So she was very tired, but she blissfully carried on. She would sew the outfits for the deities by herself. They didn't really have much at that time. They didn't have much Lakshmi. They didn't have outfits from India or anything. So they had 1 or 2 outfits and the rest she would just sew herself. Sorry, I got lost where I was. But anybody got any questions right now? Because the time is kind of going and going.
Yes, Mataji. Is it okay if I can ask the question, Mataji?
Sure. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mataji, for wonderful pastime. Really nice to hear. It looks like we should keep on going. I have question. You mentioned, Mataji, like, sometime we take the things as a granted. So what it's my personal question means to say, like when I go to temple, like continuous, like once in a week. So the way I see the darshan, it's like, I just see lordship. But if I go to temple couple of time, like 2 or 3 days, and I continuously see the deities, so the kind of appreciation, I mean, say it's like once in a week go or 3 times, so I tends to take, like, I have already seen. But you are working serving the deities from last 20 year. So like we say, how to get more enthusiasm to see the deities and service, if we are doing service, any pujari service or service related to deities, how we should not take as a granted and see as a new opportunity on daily basis, instead of seeing like have already came last week, and it's so I just want to develop the mood how uh, if we go every day, the darshan which we are getting, it's like we have not seen so long, and the kind of enthusiasm we can develop while taking darshan, Mataji.
Yeah, very nice question. Thank you. So Krishna's ever fresh. He's always performing his pastimes. He's always changing. He's always new. Like I said to you, sometimes he's got bluish complexion. Sometimes he's completely white. So these sort of things help us to develop that attraction of he's not just a deity. He is actually Krishna. Krishna is directly there in that form. When we're not having so much enthusiasm, it's because our consciousness is thinking of him as mundane. So it happens because we're in this material world and we're dealing a lot with mundane and the sort of material energy. So when we come into the temple, we may be carrying that with us. So we have to try and leave it behind. But the best way is actually to develop that personal relationship. And we develop the personal relationship with Krishna in the same way we do with the devotees. If you want to get to know somebody, you want to please somebody, you want to, sort of become closer to somebody, what do? You serve them. It's the best way to get to know someone and to get them to know you. You offer some service, you'll find you become closer. So this is how we do with Krishna too. We offer some service. Bhakti Vishwambara Madhav Maharaj used to say, he'd be like, don't try to see Krishna. Act in such a way that he wants to see you. So when we're going to the temple, we think we are going for darshan. But actually, we're presenting ourselves to Krishna. See, Krishna, I'm here to serve you. And that changes the mood. It makes us much more humble, because even though we're so unqualified for his service, we're still coming because the only thing that we want is to have service for Krishna. So in this way, the more you come and serve over the years, the more you will see that personal relationship coming. And there's other sort of, personal pastimes that devotees have had. For instance, at one time, for quite a long period of time, maybe even 2 years or something, we didn't used to make so many extra garlands. We just make their main garlands for their necks. And then if there was some extra flowers, we might make some bracelets, or we might make something for the flute. There was not even a flute garland before. But yeah, so if there was a few leftover flowers at the end to finish them off, we would just make something a little bit extra. And what we would find is every time we made something for Radharani, Krishna would wear it. Every time we made something for Krishna, Radharani would end up wearing it. So like this, they would swap their garlands so often. Either of limited flowers or limited time, we would just make for one. So one day we'd make for Radharani, one day we'd make for Krishna, but they would always swap them. They would never end up on the devi we made them for. So this is one of their pastimes that they perform. And when they do things like that, sometimes devotees get a little agitated. Oh, the pujari didn't put it where I thought it was going to be. That wasn't meant to be for that. And I always said, no, Krishna will dress himself how he wants. It's totally out of our control. And I can tell you, as somebody who is now dressing the deities, I made garlands for almost 20 years and I was not dressing the deities. But now that I do, I can tell you for sure, we're not really dressing. They dress themselves. But they're kindly engaging us as instruments in that service. So it's out of Krishna's causeless mercy that he gives service to him. And therefore, serving him is not a right, it's a privilege. It's an honor and a privilege, and it's bestowed to those devotees who are humble and sincere enough to want to come and serve in that way. Does that answer you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji, for wonderful answer. Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Krishna, Mataji, I just have one question. All right, that's okay.
Is
Yes,
it now, Prabhu?
Mataji, yes, Mataji, if that's okay. Otherwise, I can go on, Mataji.
No. Please go on. Please go on.
Sorry, Mataji. Yeah, just one question, which I come across many times myself. Like as Mataji explained that Maya is very powerful. We should always be protected. Sometimes, Mataji, when we get service in the temple, right? People get different kinds of services. Sometimes people get that inner service, with being with the deities, or say around the deities, in the temple hall. But sometimes, devotees get outside, in the shoe rack area or some other thing. But sometimes the mind will tell, especially, even I felt many times, oh, I'm missing something. Devotees are very lucky; they are around the deities. But no, I'm very unfortunate. I'm outside, doing some menial service. So, how to overcome that kind of thought? First of all, I always sometimes I get this thing.
Yes. Again, because we're in that neophyte stage, it's natural that comes to us. But we have to remind ourselves that all services are equal. Because without all the different services, nothing could function. So say everybody was just serving the, deity on the altar inside, then, who would take care of the guests? How would all of that function, And we also take the mood that we want to be the servant of Krishna. So the first thing, like when we go on the altar, the first thing that we remind ourselves is by saying the prayer for, first of all, accepting the spiritual body, so understanding that I'm a spirit soul. And what it means to be a spirit soul is I'm very tiny, very minute in size. And second thing we do is pray that we are the servant of Krishna. And then we also take the mood of the spiritual master. We remind ourselves that I'm serving the spiritual. He's doing the service, but then, I'm serving him. So in this regard, I remember very much Janananda Maharaj. For many, many years when I would come to Mayapur, he personally would be greeting the devotees when they came to Mayapur Dham. The first person you would see would be him. As a sannyasi, he would wait all day at Gada Bhavan, where the devotees were arriving, and he would give them a flower and some chandan. Every single devotee. And then there were drinks set up, and he would just make sure that everybody was welcomed when they first arrived for the Gopadim festival. And so every day of that Gopadim festival, when there was arrival of devotees expected, he would be there. So, even the sannyasis take that role. They want to be able to serve. And when you want to just simply serve and to be a part of the service, you'll do anything. Many of the acharyas, they'll pray, may I just be a blade of grass in Vrindavan. or a stone. So even in an inanimate object, because in Vrindavan, everybody serves, whether it's whether you've got a human or an animal form, or you're an inanimate object, or you're a blade of grass or a stone or a rock or whatever, everyone is serving. So yeah, we just try and keep that mood of just simply to serve in whatever capacity we have. And you may feel like, you mentioned the shoe racks, it's a service that you might feel like it's kind of the lowest service. You're not even in front of the deities in the temple room. You're right outside in the cold and the rain, but you're getting the mercy of the dust of the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. It's actually one of the best services to do.
So it makes a sense. So I definitely I try to like that the mood what you mentioned, and always remembering we are serving the spiritual master.
And also remember what I said before about we're trying to get Krishna to see us. So acting in such a way that Krishna will want to see us. And Radharani herself pushes the other gopis forward because she thinks if they can serve him better than me, even though nobody can serve better than her. But she thinks if they can serve better from me, better they go forward. So she's always pushing the other gopis forward, and she stays in the background. We can take her example as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, man. Thank you very much for that.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much
Hare Krishna
for your
Mataji.
wonderful association, and we are so blessed to hear from you. It's been a, a while that been desiring to hear from you. I mean, for all the devotees, also for their personal conviction, to grow. Thank you so much for that. And Mataji, if you could kindly share some pastimes where devotees felt that personal reciprocation. I mean, everyone feels that in some way or other. Radha Londoneswara is so merciful. But if you could share some of the pastimes, what devotees, I mean, the reciprocation devotees have experienced, that can also, give that, encouragement for all the devotees to serve more the lordships. So that's a request, Mataji.
So one pastime that comes to mind is, and there's many like this, but one particular one comes that one time in the winter time, it was very cold. And one of the pujaris, she woke up in the middle of the night and she felt really cold. And she was thinking, what is this? The heater is on, but why I'm feeling this chill? So for a while, she couldn't fall back to sleep. And then eventually she thought, oh, let me just go downstairs. So she took a shower, put clean clothes on, and went downstairs. And she went there to find that the window was open. So Krishna was actually waking her up to say, I'm cold, the window's been left open, come close it. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. Similarly, Lord Jagannath, he often tells us what he wants for how the temple should be even managed. I remember one time there was some big question that we had of how we should do things in the temple. And we couldn't decide between ourselves. So then we went and told one pujari, can you ask Lord Jagannath this question? She said, yeah, give me 2 or 3 days. And then she came back and then she gave the reply of what he said. So the deities are speaking with us as well. There was one pujari who lived in the temple and she never had an alarm set, ever. No matter when she was sleeping, she would immediately wake up. Oh, I got to go and open the curtains. I got to go wake up the deities. I got to, it would just naturally, Krishna would always tell her and reciprocate. So this is how we know Krishna is definitely there. He's definitely a person. One very recent story is also of one Mataji who was very, very unwell. And the doctor said she needed surgery. So on the day of her surgery, she came and she performed the morning Aarti, the AM program. And then she actually requested, it wasn't her day, so she asked for whoever was doing it. She said, I'm having surgery on this day. Please, can you swap your AM program and can I do it instead? Because I don't know when after that I'll be able to come and serve. When she went into surgery, they found such a big mass inside of her that the doctor said to her after the surgery, when she woke up, they said, how are you moving around? Did you walk with a frame? She said, no. Did you walk with a stick or 2 sticks? She said, no. They said, did you just stay in the house only? She said, no. They said it was so big, she shouldn't have even been able to stand up. Yet on the very day of her surgery, she came and offered Aarti and was going up and down the stairs. Yes, she was in pain, but miraculously more than what she should have been able to do. This is where I was saying Krishna facilitates his service. So if we have that absorption in just serving him, he facilitates everything. So I think the main message I'll give here now is that we have to be very mindful that we don't bring ourselves into the picture. It shouldn't be about I, me, and mine. It's being a pujari means it's about the deities and about the devotees. So when we're doing like public abhisheks and things, we have to be very mindful to be very much in the background. And in fact, this adds to your question, Rasana Prabhu, that actually being in the background is the best way to please Krishna. So the pujari has to become expert of being in the background. They're facilitating the darshan, they're facilitating the abhishek, they're facilitating the program, but it's all for the pleasure of the devotees. So as a pujari, sometimes you don't even get to see anything. You don't get to participate in anything because you're busy in the background. Yeah. So it's not sort of a big glamorous position or anything like that. Like I say, it's a privilege and we just want to serve. I don't know, I could keep going on, but I know also timing wise. So Yamanesh Rimachi, please guide us.
Thank you, Mataji. Yes, you can go on. Devotees are happy to. Normally, that's what it is. The class starts like around 8ish, and we go till 9:15, you know. But
Okay.
because I know it's a long day for you, and that's the reason we thought we can do it early. And of course, Mataji, if anything else you want to share, we are so glad. I mean, every word is like so empowering, so enlivening, so encouraging, and it's also helping us to set the right mood. You know, whether we are taking darshan of the deities or whether serving the deities in the front or at the back, you know, it sets that mood. You know, that is what is most important. It's not that we are just coming to serve for just one time. We want to serve the Lord, you know, for a long time. That means we need to have the proper spirit to, you know, do it. Then only we can, you know, we can get that, you know, privilege to serve him. So we are very grateful for that, that you are emphasizing on that, which is very important. It is not just going, we came back, but we want to, deepen our relationship with the deities. That's the most important thing, I think, which Ranjani, my Prabhu, you answered it. I mean, please tell us that how we can deepen that relationship more and more when we are coming to the temple every time to see the lordships. I mean, how do we serve them? Because I heard from my spiritual master that when we go in front of the deities, we should not go empty hand. We should always, bring something for them. So how all these things we can, I mean, really take it deep to our heart, not just that, oh, I just came, I saw, I went, but we want that mood to deepen our relationship with Sri Radha Londoneswara. And also the name, how Srila Prabhupada gave, if you can kind of, because I always keep telling here devotees, which is my personal, this thing with the Lord also, is that at some point of time I need to leave the country. I'm talking about probably 10-15 years back, that was the situation. But I remember Prabhupada saying that he's a proprietor of London. Of course, the Lord is he's the Lord of the universe, and Srila Prabhupada said he's especially the proprietor of London. So I'm naming it as Radha Londoneswara. So I prayed to him that, please permit me if, I can serve you here if you wish. I mean, if it pleases you. And then I could see the magic that it's impossible that I could stay here with my visa and other situations. But how the Lord turned around everything, that it became favorable that for me to stay in this place and serve him. And it happened to many devotees also. So we would love to hear from you that the Lord has given us that mercy, but we don't want to take it for granted. I mean, it's the material mind that it takes for granted. So if you can enlighten us at how we can deepen our relationship with the Lord and value every single thing, value the devotees also who gives us this opportunity to serve. So please kindly enlighten us.
Okay.
Develop that mood.
So I'll start with their name. Yeah, Londoneswara. Ishwara, we know, means controller, means the lord of everything, but he's specifically Ishwara of London. And for that reason, he's taken up residence right in the center of London, in the heaviest part of London. In fact, the red light district is there.
Yes.
Soho is like the worst part, but he's decided to take up residence there. For so many years, we've been desiring a bigger temple. And for so many years, the devotees have been thinking, oh, Regent's Park would be a nice place to have our temple, like the big London mosque. Even I heard at one time Prabhupada, it was mentioned to Prabhupada, and he also said, yes, this would be very nice. But somehow or other, every attempt we have made to purchase another place somewhere around that area, it never works. It seems like Radha Londoneswara just want to stay where they are, right in the center. Oxford Street is right there. You can bring people off the street right into the temple. You go towards Regent's Park, the throughput of persons will be much less. We don't have to go further than the front door to distribute books. It's an amazing location. And right there in that center. So he is Londoneswara. And being Londoneswara means that he didn't just come in 1969. He's always been Londoneswara. He became manifest to our eyes in 1969, or since that time. So we underestimate Krishna in some ways. We limit him, but he's unlimited. He's always been there. Yeah. And he's also unlimited in how he shows us, even his darshans. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to prepare. I wanted to kind of show you some different darshans over the years, all these different pictures, and maybe I can do that another time because I only had a day to prepare and I was working the whole weekend, so I just really didn't have the time to sort of find them all. But yeah, you see the changing faces of him all over the years, all the different sort of styles that he's been through. Another thing you were mentioning about reciprocation of the deities, do you know that the same outfit sometimes fits and sometimes doesn't? Just like our clothes sometimes fit, sometimes don't. So when he's had a few big feasts in a row, the clothes don't fit. And at other times, then they fit perfectly. You know? So he's constantly showing us that he is there. He is a person. Then in terms of not taking it for granted, I would say show determination, show steadiness, and show commitment. It's really important, commitment. We underestimate commitment so much. One previous Mataji who's serving the temple, Krishna Panadika Mataji, I remember years ago she said this statement and it really stuck with me. She said, Krishna doesn't need us for his service, but we should think that if I don't go for this service, it won't happen. We should have that anxiety that this service depends on me, and by hook or by crook, I'm going to be there. So in that sense, we become dedicated, we become committed, we become determined that no matter what is happening, we will be there for our service. I remember one Mataji, her husband passed away and she was at the temple serving and she just continued to serve. She finished her service, then she went. She got the news there. And first she came and she asked the senior pujari, I've just had this news, and I know normally if there's a death like that, then you shouldn't serve. But I feel I should just serve. It's my service. You know? Who's going to do that service? It was like early in the morning. She found it like 2 a.m. or something. So it was the morning dressing. So she served. You know? And all she was asked, you know, how are you affected? Are you feeling emotional like that? She didn't feel anything. She just served. Then she went and took care of whatever needed to take care of. You know, so even in these extreme situations, devotees are dedicated to perform their duty and serve. And Krishna sees that. Krishna is there taking care of everything around us. And in this way, when we do this, we will understand that actually we are not doing anything. He is the one maintaining us. He is the one protecting us. So what reason do we have to not serve? There is no reason. Because everything is coming from him. So whatever you do, even if you don't have so much time, try and do one thing that you always do for him. So if, you know, sometimes devotees have always brought him an apple. Or there's one lady who always brings him flowers from her garden. Every day. And it's a tiny little bunch like this. But every single day she comes with that bunch. You know, so this is commitment. This is dedication. You know, today I was reminded the little screen that is in front of Srila Prabhupada where they put sponsors. And I paid obeisance to Prabhupada. As I got up, I saw a picture of somebody I once knew. And I was like, oh, how's that come? So I was reminded of him. And then when I went up closer, I saw he had sponsored the Sunday feast for his 70th birthday. This couple, him and his wife, used to come and cook Sunday feast every second or third week for many, many, many years. And they only stopped when their bodies could not allow them to come because they come from somewhere on the south coast. So they would travel in every weekend. They were there for the Sunday program, and every second or third week they would cook the Sunday feast. Western devotees, excellent cooks, In fact, his wife wrote a book on eggless cakes, a brown book. And it was some of the best feasts that we used to have. And it was just so sweet that he sponsored the Sunday feast for his birthday. And I was like, wow, I was remembering all those Sunday feasts that they cooked. So just like we remember devotees like that we've been coming for years, done really dedicated service, but maybe cannot come anymore. Similarly, Krishna also remembers when you cannot do anymore. So it's really, really important that whilst we can, we try and engage in his service. Whether big or small, it doesn't matter. To Krishna, that doesn't matter. It's the dedication and devotion that comes with that dedication that he sees. So if you give that, he will then reciprocate with you. Krishna promises in Bhagavad Gita, according to how you surrender, he'll reciprocate with you. So part of your surrender is how you will serve him, how you will deal with him, how you will reciprocate with him. And the most important is dealing with him as a person. Don't think he's just a statue, he's not. And when you deal with him in that personal way, then everything else sort of comes with it. Even the understanding of what to do, how to do, it all just comes from the fact that you're seeing him as a person. Is that okay?
So wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mataji. Well, keep that. Please bless us that we can keep that in that spirit and serve the lordships for their pleasure. And also, if you could, maybe a few words about the marathon, because this is Srila Prabhupada's marathon, and I know how devotees really, from the early days till now, they dedicate, in the temple, for this marathon. So, and how it is pleasing to the lordships. So if you could share, that would be really inspiring, because all the devotees are trying, for this marathon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the marathon and book distribution, Prabhupada was instructed by his own spiritual master. Whenever you get money, print books. So Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur put more importance on the books, distribution and the books, than anything else, even having temples and like that. Because it's about bringing the conditioned living entities back towards Krishna. We're here in this material world because we've turned away from Krishna. So the more devotees who turn towards Krishna, then Krishna becomes pleased and he becomes satisfied. I was hearing just this morning how the pious Indians are actually very close to Krishna. And I'm talking about just those who are just Hindus and very pious and very moral like that. They're actually very close to Krishna. But they have their backs towards Krishna. Because they're not really seeing him as that person. They're just doing it because of piety and because of good culture. The Westerners, on the other hand, Prabhupada said, are very far away from Krishna because they've come from such abominable backgrounds. But at least they are facing towards Krishna. So as soon as a devotee or a living entity turns from having their back to Krishna to turning towards Krishna, Krishna becomes so happy. We are all his children. So as a child, as soon as a child turns towards you and smiles, how happy you would feel, especially if it's your own child. So again, Krishna doesn't want us walking the other direction. He wants us to face him. So we are part of this preaching mission. And Prabhupada wanted us to have everything in that preaching mood. So even worshipping the deities, even dressing the deities, it's all so that we make it all very attractive so that then the living entities want to turn towards Krishna. So therefore, this book distribution is really important because it's not only giving out knowledge, but it's also attracting them to come back and see Krishna. You'll hear many stories of devotees who have just found the books, got it from a book distributor or found it somewhere. You know, even one of our devotees, she got a book from her mother who found it at her grandfather's house after he passed away. So he must have been given that book from a book distributor. He kept it on the shelf. You know, his daughter finds it and then gives it to her daughter. She becomes a devotee. You know, so we hear many stories like that. So it's really important to get these books out there. Get the word of Krishna and Krishna himself, because Krishna himself is in these books. So get Krishna out into the homes of as many people as we can, even if they don't read them. Simply by having a piece of the scriptures in their house, they are benefited. And that Agyata Sukriti will then eventually one day bring them to Krishna. So therefore, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to inspire living entities to turn towards Krishna. Even if they don't start walking in his direction, but at least they turn to face him, no matter how far away they are. And so the winter marathon actually started. You think, well, why a winter marathon? Why is that the most important time of year? Because it's so cold, it's so hard, it's often raining or snowing even. And yet devotees are out there 8-10 hours a day. So why now? So it actually started by accident. Devotees were doing book distribution, but then one year they noticed that at Christmas time a lot more books went out. The scores on the December period were much higher. And they realized it's because people were saying, oh, I'm not really interested, but actually, yeah, I have an uncle that might be interested. I'll buy it for him for Christmas, you know. So they're anyway looking for Christmas presents. And so, you know, they come across a book distribution and they think, oh, maybe they'll be interested. Let's get this. It's a unique Christmas present, right? Everybody wants to find unique presents. So this would be very unique. So when they mentioned this to Prabhupada, Prabhupada said, oh, this is very nice. Yes, we must utilize this time. So it's part of the concept that we utilize everything for Krishna. So Christmas also, it's not something that we particularly celebrate, but we utilize it for Krishna, for his service. And so we're out there giving people as much mercy as we can so that we can distribute this far and wide. So again, whatever little endeavor you can make, or big endeavor, but even a little endeavor, Krishna sees that. Because even one person gets that book. I remember when I first started book distribution, I was very scared. And so I would never go with anything but a very small book, very thin book. But I would always remind myself, even if one person takes this book, that's one extra person that's got a book. And remind yourself that even if they don't read it, somebody else may. So if they're favorable, they're willing, then try to just get them to take that one book. But Prabhupada was very insistent that we also take a donation. Because he said that they will value the book more if they've given some monetary compensation for it. Otherwise, if it's completely for free, the likelihood is they'll walk away and maybe even throw it in the bin straight away. So that's why we tried to take a donation.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Very, very inspiring. And I mean, we have Sri Radha Londoneswara's anniversary this coming 18th. Before that, to get this your association, get your association and this wonderful instructions, guidance. I think this would help us to also, pray to the Lordships to develop those spirit within us so we can serve them with absorption, with commitment, and as you said, with the determination in the right spirit of service. So thank you so much. And please keep, you are actually enlightening a lot of devotees and training many devotees in the Pujari, service. So please kindly extend, your association for all of us so that many of the devotees all of them can get trained and we can serve the Lordships in whatever capacity possible. And bring many, many more souls to the lotus feet of Sri Radha Londoneswara. So every single new person, when he comes and starts getting connected to serve the Lordships, I think that gives a great, joy for Srila Prabhupada. And, that gives great pleasure to Sri Radha Londoneswara. I think that's the best gift we can offer to them. So please keep us in your prayers. Please bless us that we can, it's not just we are hearing, but we can go deep in our heart and we can, bring it, in our real lives. Thank you so much again for your association. We request all the devotees, we can show our appreciation and gratitude to Her Grace Swami Radhika Mataji for giving us this very valuable association by loudly calling out 3 times Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Please request all the devotees if you can come a few minutes in the video. That would be very great. I know it's a working day. So many things going on. But if you could kindly come on the video, you can get the blessings also. So when we present ourselves before the Lordships and also to their dear devotees, we get more blessings, isn't it? Yeah. So please come on the video and take your show your appreciation and gratitude. Thank you very much. Shall we say one more time Hare Krishna mantra?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Rama, Hare
Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Great Swami Radhika Mataji ki jai.
Hare.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was wonderful to meet you all and to be able to share something.
We would like to have a part 2 at some point of time later, Mataji. I know you have so much to offer, to share, and I know it's a bit of short notice. So, it's suddenly we were also in the Holy Dham serving, and I was remembering Radha Londoneswara, as you said, so much. They reminded us so much in various places, and I was just suddenly, kind of an inspiration came from our hearts that, yeah, why not, to hear about the Lordships, just before their appearance, anniversary. And then that's why when we actually, approached you, but within a short notice, even though it was short notice, you accepted that. And, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. We would love to have part 2.
No, thank you for inviting me. And yeah, please all try and come on Monday next week. There is another very special darshan planned.
Okay.
So I won't give too much away. And also the Pushpa Abhishek as well. Again, that one started on the 40th anniversary, was the first time we did Pushpa Abhishek. And I'll just really quickly tell you, but because we had 10 days of darshans and I was doing the flowers every day, we got to the day of Pushpa Abhishek, which was the main Odhan Shashti day. And I think I got to about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I went, oh no. And everyone was like, what happened? I forgot to buy the flowers for the Pushpa Abhishek. I cannot believe it. So every time we do this, I remember now we buy £2,000 worth of flowers for the petals. But that day I totally forgot to buy the flowers for the petals. And it was a Sunday and the shops were already closed. So Murli Manohar Prabhu said to me, he said, everything that you don't need for tomorrow's garland, only keep exactly what you need for tomorrow's garlands. Everything else, not one flower should be left, pick and put into petals. And we still had a wonderful Pushpa Abhishek that year. So, Krishna plays, but we also have these anxieties for his service. So, yeah, but definitely it'll be a wonderful darshan on Monday. For the first time in a number of years, they're getting a homemade outfit.
Hari Bol, Jai.
Jai.
Okay, so hopefully we'll see you all on Monday.
Yes.
And thank you for inviting me today. May
Thank you
I
very
offer my
much.
obeisances? Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Mataji.
Thank you so much,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji.
so much, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
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 Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.